Assalamu alaikum, let's explore this Islamic topic together. Hey, so, you know how we were talking about different cultures and their approaches to charity the other day? Well, I've been doing some reading about Islamic charity. And it's fascinating how deeply ingrained it is. Going way back, it's not just giving to the poor. It's a whole system, a core belief, really, stemming directly from the Quran. That's what makes it so compelling to study Quranic charity. Cross-cultural giving practices across time. Think about it. Islam isn't just a religion. It's a complete way of life. And woven into the very fabric of that life is the concept of zakat, which is one of the 5 pillars of Islam. It's not optional, it's a mandatory form of charity, a religious obligation. This isn't just about throwing some spare change into a collection box. It's a highly structured system designed to redistribute wealth and ensure social justice. The Quran itself is filled with verses emphasizing the importance of giving to those less fortunate. It's not just about compassion, although that's definitely part of it. It's also about purifying one's wealth. Imagine it like this. You work hard, you earn money, but a portion of that wealth, according to the Quran, actually belongs to the community. By giving zakat, you're not just helping others. You are cleansing your own spirit and ensuring your own spiritual well-being. It's a beautiful idea, right? A bit like spiritual spring cleaning. And the beautiful thing is, the practical applications of this principle have been incredibly diverse across cultures and throughout history. The early Muslim community, after the Prophet Muhammad's migration to Medina, faced many challenges, but they tackled them with a remarkable sense of community support fueled by zakat. Think about it. They were building a whole new society from scratch. And this system of systematic charity played a vital role in their survival and prosperity. It wasn't just about food and shelter. It fostered a sense of unity and social cohesion that was crucial in those early, often difficult, years. Now, you might think, okay, that's the early days. What about today? Well, the principles remain the same. But the application has evolved alongside different cultures and economic cons. In some parts of the Muslim world, zakat is still primarily collected and distributed locally through mosques and religious institutions. They often have sophisticated systems in place to identify those in need and ensure the funds reach them effectively. It's a community-led approach, very much in the spirit of the early Muslim community. But in other places, the interpretation and implementation are more modern and complex. We are seeing the emergence of larger, international organizations that on zakat-based charitable work. They're often tackling issues on a global scale, things like disaster relief, educational initiatives, and sustainable development projects in places that might not be traditionally viewed as Islamic communities, showing the universality of compassion. The interesting part is how these different approaches still adhere to the core principles of the Quran. While the mechanics might vary, from local mosque-led initiatives to large-scale international aid projects, the underlying philosophy of sharing wealth, promoting social justice, and purifying one's soul remains consistently central. Think about the historical con. 2. Over centuries, Islamic societies have navigated numerous political and economic changes, and zakat has adapted alongside them. Consider the vast empire of the past, the Abbasid Caliphate, for example. Their sophisticated systems for tax collection and wealth redistribution drew heavily from the principles of zakat, creating complex infrastructures that supported a large and diverse population. These systems weren't always perfect, of course, and faced their challenges. But they nonetheless highlight the long-lasting impact of this concept. And even in challenging times, like periods of conflict or oppression, the importance of zakat often remained a powerful force. It became a lifeline for vulnerable communities, a testament to the endurance of these core religious beliefs and their power to sustain hope even in difficult circumstances. It's a reminder that even during times of struggle, humanity's innate capacity for compassion continues to find ways to shine through. So, when you look at Quranic charity, at *zakat specifically, you're not just looking at a system of giving. You are looking at a profound reflection of Islamic values and their impact on societies across continents and throughout centuries. It's a story of adaptation, resilience, and a persistent commitment to social justice, rooted in the teachings of the Quran. It's a story that's constantly evolving, but one that reminds us of the enduring power of compassion and the importance of community. And that, I think, is what makes it so fascinating and relevant today. Hey, so, you know how we were talking about charity the other day? Well, I've been doing some reading about Islamic charity, specifically how it's rooted in the Quran. And it's fascinating how it evolved across different cultures and time periods. It's way more than just dropping some money in a box. You know, it's a whole rich history interwoven with faith and societal impact. Imagine this. It's the early days of Islam. Maybe 7th century Arabia. Things are pretty rough. Lots of tribal conflicts, poverty is widespread, and life is, frankly, a struggle for many. Then, boom, the Quran arrives. And with it, a whole new framework for how people should interact. Not just with God, but with each other. Charity, or zakat, isn't just suggested. It's a pillar of Islam, a cornerstone of the faith. It's not optional, it's a fundamental act of worship. The Quran itself lays out the framework. It's not just about giving money, though that's a big part of it. Think of it as a structured system of wealth redistribution. A certain percentage of your wealth, if you exceed a specific threshold, is set aside for the needy. This isn't some random amount either. It's carefully calculated to ensure a fair and just system. The specifics have evolved over time, interpreted differently across different schools of Islamic thought. But the core principle remains. Sharing your wealth with those less fortunate is a direct act of devotion. Now, the really interesting part is how this principle, this core idea of zakat, played out across different cultures and time periods. It wasn't a static system. It adapted, it evolved, it reflected the realities of the communities it touched. In the early days, think of those burgeoning Muslim communities in Arabia. Zakat wasn't just about money. It included food, livestock, even things like jewelry or valuable goods. It was a practical response to immediate needs. Imagine a drought hitting. Zakat would have played a crucial role in keeping people alive. Sharing the available res. As Islam spread, so did its charitable practices. You see incredibly diverse applications of zakat across different societies. Think of the vast empire that emerged, from the Umayyads to the Abbasids. In these powerful empire, zakat systems became far more organized. You had designated officials, entire departments within the government, responsible for collecting and distributing zakat funds. They built massive infrastructure, granaries to store grain, hospitals to care for the sick, even entire systems of irrigation to support agricultural communities. It was a truly massive undertaking, an early form of social welfare, funded entirely by this religious obligation. Then, as Islam spread further east into Persia, India, and beyond, you see zakat taking on new cultural nuances. The same principle, but adapted to the local cons. The ways zakat was collected and distributed might vary, depending on the specific economic systems and local customs. Maybe it involved more community-based initiatives. Perhaps local leaders played a larger role in determining the best way to distribute res. But the core essence, the fundamental spirit of charitable giving, remained intact. Think about it, this wasn't just a matter of religious obligation. It was also a powerful social glue, binding communities together. The rich weren't just giving out of piety, they were fulfilling a societal duty. In turn, the poor weren't just receiving charity, they were part of a system that affirmed their dignity and worth within society. This created a sense of social responsibility, a shared commitment to the well-being of the entire community, regardless of wealth or status. And it wasn't just about financial aid. Zakat also extended to other forms of support. Education, for instance, was often considered a form of charity, allowing the less fortunate access to learning and opportunities they might otherwise have lacked. The development of libraries, the support of scholars and teachers, all of this was considered under the broader umbrella of zakat. But it wasn't always smooth sailing. There were times of conflict, misinterpretations, and corruption. Sometimes, the systems for collecting and distributing zakat faltered, leading to inequities. The application of zakat has always been a continuous of interpretation and adaptation, responding to the social and economic complexities of the times. However, throughout these challenges, the underlying principles of compassion, justice, and social responsibility remained steadfast. So, you see, Quranic charity wasn't just a simple act of giving. It was a complex, evolving system with profound implications across cultures and centuries. It was a powerful force shaping societies, providing social safety nets, fostering community cohesion, and influencing the course of history. It continues to this day, inspiring countless acts of kindness and compassion around the world. It's a story of faith, justice, and the enduring power of human generosity, a story that still resonates with us today. Hey, so we were talking about Islamic charity, right? We touched on the basics. But things get really interesting when you dive into the meat of it. How zakat and sadaqah, these core principles of giving, actually played out across different cultures and throughout history. It's not just a dry recitation of rules. It's a vibrant tapes woven from countless individual acts of kindness, ingenuity, and adaptation. Think about it. The Quran isn't a rigid instruction manual. It lays down the fundamental principles, the why asterisk of giving, but the how has been shaped and reshaped by the societies that embraced Islam. Imagine the early Muslim community in Medina, a melting pot of different tribes and backgrounds. They had their own pre-existing systems of support, their own understandings of generosity and social responsibility. Suddenly, these ideas are colliding with the powerful message of the Quran, urging them to build a society rooted in justice and compassion. That's where things get fascinating. The Quran speaks directly about zakat, a mandatory form of charity calculated on wealth. But it also emphasizes sadaqah, voluntary giving. This isn't just about dropping coins in a collection box. It's about a deep-seated sense of responsibility towards the community, towards the vulnerable, and ultimately, towards God. Now, in the early days, imagine the practical challenges. How do you calculate zakat in a society where wealth wasn't always easily quantifiable? How do you ensure fair distribution in a diverse community with varying needs? We're talking about nomadic Bedouin tribes alongside settled farmers and merchants, each with their own unique economic realities. The solutions weren't pre-packaged. They emerged from a dynamic interplay between the Quranic principles and the lived experiences of these communities. Take the concept of waqf, for example. This isn't mentioned explicitly in the Quran but evolved organically as a crucial mechanism for charitable giving. Imagine someone dedicating land, property, or even business profits to a charitable cause, a mosque, a hospital, a school, for generations to come. This allowed for sustained support for essential services, even beyond the lifetime of the original donor. It's a testament to the long-term vision inherent in Islamic charitable practices. Think of the impact. Generations benefiting from the foresight and generosity of their ancestors. And the ingenuity didn't stop there. Different cultures adapted the principles to their specific cons. In some regions, zakat evolved into sophisticated systems of wealth redistribution, involving meticulous record-keeping and community oversight. In other places, sadaqah took the form of elaborate public works projects, building canals, restoring roads, providing clean water, transforming entire communities. Let's jump forward a few centuries. Islamic empire stretched across vast territories, from the Iberian Peninsula to India. Each region had its own unique economic structures, social customs, and environmental challenges. This meant that charitable practices continued to diversify and adapt. In some areas, you see wealthy patrons financing libraries and universities, fostering intellectual and spiritual growth. In others, emphasis was placed on providing healthcare, supporting orphans, or aiding travelers. And even today, you see this incredible dynamism. The core principles remain, but the expressions are as diverse as the Muslim world itself. From microfinance initiatives empowering women to large-scale disaster relief efforts, the spirit of zakat and sadaqah continues to shape communities around the globe. But it's not just about the money. You see, it's about the attitude, the mindset. The Quran repeatedly emphasizes the importance of giving with sincerity, without seeking recognition or reward. It's about a deep connection with the needs of others, an understanding that we are all interconnected, and that sharing our blessings is an act of worship in itself. It's a beautiful thing, really, the way these seemingly simple principles have been interpreted, adapted, and reinterpreted across centuries and cultures, always returning to the core message of compassion and social responsibility. It's a story of human ingenuity, resilience, and the enduring power of faith to inspire acts of extraordinary kindness. It's way more than just money. It's a living legacy of generosity that continues to shape the world. It's a story that continues to unfold, and I think that's pretty amazing. Okay, so we've been talking about how zakat, sadaqah, and other forms of charity in Islam, as described in the Quran, have shaped giving across cultures and throughout history, right? It's been a fascinating journey, hasn't it? Thinking about how these principles have adapted and evolved is really amazing. As we near the end of our little exploration here, I think the most important takeaway is that Quranic charity isn't just about money. Although the practical aspects of zakat, the obligatory annual charity, are really significant. It's about a whole philosophy of giving, a deep-seated belief in social justice and communal responsibility woven into the very fabric of the faith. And that's what has made it so enduring and adaptable across so many different cons. Think about the early Muslim community in Medina. They were facing incredible hardship, many were new converts, escaping persecution, often with little to nothing. Yet, the Quran's emphasis on sharing and supporting the vulnerable was instrumental in building their society. It wasn't just about individual piety, it became the very foundation of their social structure. The early caliphs, the successors to the Prophet Muhammad, took this very seriously, establishing systems for collecting and distributing zakat, making sure it reached those most in need, the poor, the orphans, the travelers, even prisoners of war. They understood that it wasn't simply about handing out money. It was about creating a society where everyone felt included and supported. And that's something that resonated across different cultures and cons as Islam spread. Imagine the vastness of the Islamic Empire at its height, stretching from Spain to India, encompassing incredibly diverse populations with their own unique customs and traditions. The core principles of Quranic charity remained, but the ways in which they were implemented naturally varied. For example, in some regions, the might have been on building hospitals and schools, providing long-term support and opportunities for advancement. In others, it might have been primarily on providing immediate relief during times of famine or natural disaster. And the forms that charity took were incredibly diverse, from providing food and water, to offering shelter and medical care, to supporting religious education and artistic endeavors. Think about the magnificent mosques and libraries built throughout the Islamic world, many funded through charitable giving. These weren't simply places of worship. They were also centers of learning and community, serving as essential hubs for the exchange of knowledge and ideas, supporting scholars, artists, and thinkers. The very existence of these beautiful structures is a testament to the lasting impact of Quranic charity. Then there's the concept of waqf, the endowment. This is a fascinating aspect of Islamic charitable giving where individuals would donate property or assets to a religious or charitable cause, with the income going towards a specific purpose, often in perpetuity. Think of it as a long-term investment in community well-being. Waqf funds have historically supported everything from hospitals and schools to public works projects, water systems, bridges, roads, things that benefit the entire community for generations. Even today, many Waqf endowments continue to function, providing crucial support to communities. And it wasn't just about large-scale projects. The emphasis on individual acts of *sadaqah*, voluntary charity, maintained a sense of personal responsibility. This is where we see that beautiful aspect of everyday compassion. A simple act of kindness, a donation of food, a helping hand, all contributing to a broader culture of generosity and empathy. So, how did it all conclude? Well, it didn't conclude. Quranic charity, in its essence, remains a vital and evolving force in the Muslim world and beyond. It's constantly adapting to new challenges and opportunities. While the specific mechanisms and forms of charitable giving might change with the times, the underlying principles of social justice, community responsibility, and compassion remain as relevant today as they were 1,400 years ago. The story isn't finished. It's an ongoing narrative, a testament to the enduring power of faith-based giving and its capacity to inspire positive change across cultures and throughout history. What strikes me most is the powerful interconnectedness, how individual acts of piety contribute to a larger social fabric of support and collective well-being. That's the legacy of Quranic charity, a beautiful blend of personal responsibility and collective impact, continually reshaping societies and enriching lives. And that's what makes it so inspiring and worthy of continued study and reflection. Hey, So we were talking about charity, right? And how it's viewed differently across cultures. Well, I was thinking about how Islamic giving, specifically is rooted in the Quran, is fascinating when you look at it across time in different cultures. It's not just about dropping some coins in a box, it's a whole worldview. The Quran, the central religion of Islam, talks extensively about zakat. Zakat isn't just charity, it's a pillar of Islam, as important as prayer or fasting. Think of it as a mandatory form of social welfare built into the very fabric of the religion. It's not optional, it's a religious obligation for those who meet certain financial thresholds. But it's not just about the amount. The Quran, and the Prophet Muhammad's example, Sunnah, emphasizes the spirit of giving. It's about doing it wholeheartedly, without expecting anything in return, no bragging rights, no public displays of piety for show. It's about genuine compassion and helping those less fortunate. Now, the early Muslim community. Think about the fledgling years after the Prophet's migration to Medina. Faced immense challenges. They were often refugees themselves, having been persecuted for their faith. Yet, even in that hardship, they were incredibly generous. Imagine sharing limited food, shelter, all this concept of zakat and inspired by the Quran's teachings. This created an amazing sense of community and solidarity. Everyone contributed according to their ability, ensuring a safety net for the weakest members of society. And that's the beauty of it. The Quran doesn't prescribe a rigid, one-size-fits-all system. It lays down the principles, fairness, compassion, helping those in need, and lets the application adapt to the specific cultural context. So, in different parts of the Muslim world, throughout history, zakat has taken on varied forms. Think about the vastness of the Islamic Empire at its peak, spanning from Spain to India. You had different cultures, different levels of wealth, different needs. In some places, zakat might have mainly aimed on providing food and shelter for the poor. In others, it might have funded public works projects, building mosques, schools, hospitals, or irrigation systems, things that benefited the entire community. Sometimes, it provided financial support for those pursuing religious education. And what's interesting is how this flexible framework allowed zakat to address the specific challenges of each region and time period. In times of drought, for example, zakat would often be diverted to provide emergency relief, ensuring people could survive. During wars or natural disasters, it could be used to support the affected populations. So it wasn't just a static, unchanging system. It evolved and adapted, always staying true to the core principle of helping those in need. Even today, the principles of Quranic charity remain incredibly relevant. We see numerous examples of Muslims around the world embracing this spirit of giving, interpreting zakat and other forms of charity in ways relevant to contemporary challenges. Whether it's providing aid during a humanitarian crisis, supporting education in underserved communities, or funding microfinancing projects to empower women, the underlying principle remains the same: to uplift humanity and create a more just and equitable society. What does it all mean for us today? Well, I think it challenges us to think beyond just individual acts of charity. It prompts us to think about systemic inequalities and how we can contribute to solving them. It encourages a holistic approach, one that's not merely reactive but also proactive. It calls us to actively participate in building stronger, more supportive communities. It's not about the size of your donation, but the sincerity of your heart. It's about understanding the spirit behind the act. The intention to alleviate suffering and build a more just world, a world reflecting the values enshrined in the Quran. Think about it, wouldn't that be a beautiful legacy to leave behind? A world where everyone feels supported, where kindness prevails, and where the spirit of Quranic charity lives on, inspiring generations to come. So, yeah, studying Quranic charity across time and cultures is a fascinating journey. It's a lesson in history, a testament to human compassion, and a guide for building a better future. It's something we can all learn from, regardless of our background or faith. It's about the fundamental human need to help each other, and the Quran's emphasis on making that a central part of our lives. What do you think? Goodbye. May Allah bless us all. That's our discussion for today.